Talia Buckley. Maiden name was Talia
White.
White.
Yes.
Wow.
I have a funny story about that.
Okay, go.
Yeah. We went to Hawaii when Ava was 18 months old, and I did all the bookings for like restaurants and things in my name because we weren't married then. And we went to this restaurant and I'd booked, and they came out and they were like, white party? White party. Just looking for the white party.
Wow.
And Dan just were there with friends who were also white. And it was very funny. So we didn't book in my maiden name
again. Did you turn up
again.
with your white pointed hats? And
Did there happen to be a table of Africans sitting to the left of you guys that were like, this is bullcrap?
Thankfully not.
Wow.
So yeah, we didn't book in my maiden name anymore.
Yeah, good.
After that. Yeah.
There you go. So,
Yes.
tell us a little about your life. Were you born in Australia?
Yes, I was born. I was born on the Gold Coast, actually.
Yahoo!
Yeah, Gold Coast. Actually in Pindara Hospital.
Pindara?
Yes. Yeah.
Pin-
And you know
Pindara.
what? Also funny.
That's paid a premium to be at Pindara.
When I did my nursing training, I did a placement at Pindara Hospital in the birthing suite, and some of the midwives that were working there at the time were there when I was born.
What the heck?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did they say they remembered you? They'll
No.
lie.
No.
Be lying if they did.
Yeah. But they worked there then.
Haven't changed a bit.
So
Okay.
I was born Pindara. My mum and dad. My dad was from Beaudesert and lived on a farm out there, and then moved to the Gold Coast and opened a fruit shop here. And then married my mum. She was
Wow.
from Brisbane.
Was his name Con?
No, Jared.
Con the fruiterer.
Nope.
Okay. That's cool.
Inside
Yep.
fruit shop joke or what's going?
Yeah.
You know who Con the Fruiterer is? Come on, you're kidding?
No.
What?
Refresh my memory. Come on.
I can't even do it. Come on, mate. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful bunch of bananas, mate. I'll give it to you for $5.
The
Hey, is that sort of right?
Yeah,
My name is
that's
Con,
pretty
mate. Con the
close, yeah.
fruiterer.
that sounds familiar.
You'll love it, mate.
But that's just because a lot of lebs and
Yeah,
wog guys
he was,
run
yeah.
fruit shops.
Yeah. And then he had a wife and she had real big eyebrows. What was her name?
I can't remember.
Anyway, I'll have to show it to you.
So he's a fruit guy.
He's a fruit guy, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yep, they had a fruit and vegetable farm in Beaudesert. And then, he came here, opened a shop.
Siblings.
Yes, brother who's younger, 2 years younger, and a sister who's 3 years older
Oh, there you are. Jammed in the middle there.
in the middle.
That's good.
That
Got
is
away
me.
with everything.
Oh, it's a pretty good kid.
Oh,
Well, you
that's
ask
good.
my mum, she'll
Okay.
tell you. I was always the good girl who didn't do anything wrong. That was
wow,
me.
that's good.
Yeah.
Ava. Wow,
Yeah, I was going to say. Little Ava.
that's cool.
Yeah.
So what about the whole faith journey? Like, were you brought up in church or
Brought up a
school?
Catholic.
Oh, yep.
Yep. So we went to Catholic schools. Both sets of grandparents. My dad's mum. My dad's dad died when he was 17, but his mum was a really devout Catholic. Every time we went out and saw her at the farm, she used to pray for us and gave us rosary beads and taught us prayers and she was very dedicated to the Lord. And my mum's parents were the same Catholics. Went to church every Sunday. They had a good faith as well. So I grew up knowing God, and obviously going to a Catholic school, it wasn't anything unfamiliar to us, but obviously very different. I realised once I became a Christian how different it was. I think that was a funny conversation that me and Dan had early days, where he was sort of saying it's important for me that whoever I end up with is a Christian. And I was like, oh, yeah, but it's the same,
Catholic,
and
Christian,
believe in God,
same thing.
same. But yeah, not the same.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah.
So when did that decision actually, or that happen? Where there was more to just the faith you knew,
Yeah.
to where it was more real.
Real. I think me and Dan were together for probably a year, maybe a little bit over a year and a half. And we got to a crossroads where we were like on again, off again. Just he still had a lot of stuff to work through from his past, and I did as well. Came out of a toxic relationship, and I just got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do this unless he's serious. So I just said to him one night, okay, you either want to be with me or you don't. We need to make a decision. This has, gone on long enough.
Wow.
And he was like, oh, but it's not that simple. I'm like, it is. Like, I've spent the last 7 years in a relationship with someone who didn't really want to be with me, so I'm not going to do that again. Like, you're either in or you're out.
Yeah. And
he was like, yeah, but, and then that's when he brought up the whole Christian thing, like, I don't want to go down that road with someone again who's not a Christian because it didn't work out for me last time. And I know that, was a big key player in what happened with us. So,
but he wasn't
exactly walking with the Lord. No, but he obviously had that conviction.
I get it, but it's quite.
It's funny, yeah. And so he just sort of said like, I can't do that again unless you're willing to come to church. And he had started going back to church, I think, at that point.
Yeah. And
I was like, oh, yeah. I mean, I don't see it as very different to what I believe in already, but I'm open to coming to church if that, means a lot to you, whatever. I'll try it out. Not really knowing what I was getting myself in.
So your only reference point for church was like the
Catholic church
form of doing.
Yeah. I think I went to a Christian church once when I was in primary school, like a little kid, and I remember going to kids' church there, and I remember it being really fun.
Yeah.
It was that's the only once that I had ever been to a Christian church.
Oh, wow.
One of my sister's friends.
Anything's fun compared to Catholic church.
On your knees on the pew.
Some people, that's what some people would say, not me.
Yeah.
Some people would say that.
Yeah, I didn't really have much Catholic experience growing up.
It's very respectfully boring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you can even understand the guys talking.
Do they speak in English yet, or are they still in Latin?
No, I think certain masses at a mass they have to speak in Latin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I was like, usually playing with toys, sitting on the floor most of the time.
Yeah.
That's what I remember when we did go to church. But so he basically just said, that's kind of that's my deal.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, sweet. And I still was actually fully expecting him to say, Ma, I don't think I want to do this. And I was like fully prepared to just drive away and be like, okay, we're done.
Is this when Ava's?
No,
before
Ava.
Okay,
before we went to Canada. Then he said, all right, as long as you can promise me that if you're in, you're in. I was like, well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't go down that road otherwise if I didn't think you were worth it. And so, he was like, okay, let's do this. I'm like, okay, cool. So then we went to church the next Sunday.
Wow.
And I think we were going for a little while.
Was it Elevation, I think?
Elevation.
Yeah, nice.
Yep. And then we went to Canada for a month together. And Dan had a great idea before going that I should go off the pill to give my body a break.
Oh, okay.
Yep. One of his friends at the time.
Dr. Dan.
Dr. Dan. One of his friends at the time, they were trying to have a baby, and he had said, they've got to go off the pill like at least a year before you want to have a baby. And obviously he had thought about that sort of stuff. And I'm like, if I go off the pill, I can get pregnant. He's like, no, it'll be fine. Anyway, went to Canada and came home 3 weeks later and I was pregnant.
Wow.
So that was fun.
Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
For our beautiful girl.
Yes.
True.
Yeah.
It's a weapon.
Yeah.
Man.
So that was a
Sorry, how old is Ava now?
9.
Far out, okay, so
Going
9
on
years ago.
22.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going on.
10 years
I run
ago.
this house.
So I came back a week before he did, and I knew something was up. So I did a pregnancy test and it was positive, and I was like, oh boy. And I told Anita because I was freaking out.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to tell him in Canada because I wasn't going to ring him or text him and be like, so having a baby.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm so worried. What's he going to think? What's he going to say? Like, he's going to freak out. We were just in the process of buying a house. So we were like, signed all the paperwork in Canada, trying to get all of that sorted, living with Dan's parents at the time and waiting for our house. And then she's like, it's fine, Talia, it'll be all good. Like, he's going to be fine, blah, blah, blah.
And I'm happy.
I'm like, okay, I'm not sure. Like, and she's like, no, it's fine. She's like, you just have to go into it with a really positive attitude. And when you tell him, you've got to like tell him in a really like happy, excited way so that he knows that you're excited. And I was like, okay. And it was nearly Christmas. So it was like a week from Christmas. And she's like, why don't you like, maybe like tell him like it's a Christmas gift or something. And so I'm like, okay. So I wrapped up the pregnancy test in Christmas paper.
Mum. So optimistic.
And I picked him up from the airport and we were driving home and we got like halfway from Brisbane Airport to the Gold Coast, and I'm like, I have something for you. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. And I opened the glove box and like handed him the gift.
The gift of
and
life.
He unwrapped it and literally this was his face.
Wow.
And he's like, so I guess 2 lines means you're pregnant. And I'm like,
doesn't mean I'm not pregnant.
yeah. And he's just like, oh, okay. And then it was just silence for like 5 minutes. And he's like, are you going to say anything? I'm like, I don't really know what to say.
No, it's your turn to respond, bro. This is where you say, awesome, it's going to be all right.
And so, yeah, then he was like, we can't have a baby now. Like, we've just bought a house. This is terrible timing. And so I was just like, oh, my gosh.
Is he still in the mines, sorry, at that point?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, he would have been. He
was,
would have been, yeah.
And so, yeah, so I was like, oh, okay, excellent, great. So then we drove home the rest of the way in silence, and then we didn't speak for like, I don't know, 2 days probably.
Oh, wow.
And Sam actually, funnily enough, was around. I don't know if you were living with your parents at that time, but
I don't remember anything.
everyone in the house knew something was up because, like, you could cut the tension with a knife, you know.
Wow.
I cried for a long time. And Anita said to me that Sam came up to her at one stage and was like, what's wrong with Dan and Talia? And she's like, nothing, everything's fine. And he's like, it's not fine. He's like, he cheated on her in Canada, didn't he?
I don't even remember this.
And then he was like, no, Sam, he didn't. Like, anyway. So, yeah, this was like a week, maybe even more than that of like, yeah, it was bad. It wasn't a good time. And I was devastated, obviously, because I always wanted to have a baby and I knew he was who I wanted to spend my life with. So, and, you know, like I always wanted that time to be, yay, I'm having a baby, you know, like telling my family. And instead I like told my mum and my mum was like, oh, that's great. And I was like, yeah, but it's not because I don't even know if Dan wants to have the baby. And
Dr. Dan who said hop off the pill.
yeah. So, yeah, that was a really hard time for us in our relationship. Like, anyway, eventually he went back to the mines and then came home after a week and he said to me, he apologised for how he acted and he said I reacted badly because in my mind I had a plan and I knew we were going to go to Canada, and when we got back I wanted us to, you know, get our house, get settled, and then I wanted to ask you to marry me, and, you know, I wanted to do everything the right way this time because I did it the wrong way the first time and I didn't want to do that again. And so he was like, if you want to have this baby, then I just need you to promise me that if we have a child together, you'll never leave me, because he's like, I can't break up another child's family again because he's like, I still have guilt over doing that to Zeke.
Yeah.
So then I guess it kind of made a bit more sense to me, like why the reaction that he had.
Yeah, wow. Not initially what you think it's about.
Yeah.
It's actually much deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
So, yeah, then we were like, okay, cool, let's do this. Gonna have a baby, and we'd only been together for like, I don't know, maybe like 18 months.
Right.
So it's new. And then, yeah, so we were going to church, and then I think I was like maybe 6 months pregnant. Oh, yeah, at Elevation, and we went into the service one day, and before I got there, I walked in and John actually was there already waiting for me, and Anita wasn't there because she had had a hip replacement. And he said to me, I don't know, I just have this like feeling something big's going to happen at church today. Like I just have this like feeling in my spirit. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I don't really know what he was on about. And so I went in and sat down. Oh, actually, no, maybe Anita was there, I think. And we sat down and worship came on, and Oceans came on. That was one of the first songs they played, and it wrecked me. I was just sitting there and I couldn't stop crying, and I didn't know why I was crying because I didn't feel sad. And I was just like, oh my gosh, so much emotion.
Wow.
Anyway, then they preached and it was great. And then at the end of the service again, they started playing, I think they did an altar call, and then they started playing the song again, and I was just like,
Wow.
oh, just crying, and my heart was like beating a million miles an hour, and everything inside of me was like, put your hand up, put your hand up, put your hand up. But my like flesh was like, no, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not doing that.
You see the battle people go through, eh?
Yeah, but
That's real.
it was
That's
like
real.
I was like sweating and crying and like, I actually don't think I physically put my hand up. I think like I just couldn't help but put my hand up. Anyway, that was like a weird thing because, they respectfully weren't very good at following up their altar calls. So they sort of said, we'll see everyone at the front. And nothing ever happened from that. I never heard from anyone.
Wow.
And then I wanted to get baptised not long after that. And they sort of put a thing out and asked about it. And me and Tani were going to get baptised there together. But then they sent out
Tani is Dan's sister.
Dan's sister.
Yeah.
Yep. They sent out a thing like saying, oh, okay, we want you to like record this video, like tell us like what God's done in your life and, all this stuff. And I was like, I don't really feel very comfortable doing that because like at that time I couldn't actually have told you what God had done in my life. I didn't. Yeah. I knew the day that I gave my heart to the Lord that was what I had to do.
Yes.
But there was nothing like at that time where I thought I could definitively tell you, yes, God has done these great things in my life.
Yeah.
So, like I just was like, I just don't really feel very comfortable with this. So I ended up pulling out because I was like, I just don't, it was on the stage in front of everyone getting baptised. And it just sort of felt a bit.
Yeah.
That when I thought about myself getting baptised, I wanted it to be just about me and God and not like a private thing, not a big show. So I just said to them, I don't think I want to do it now. And then not long after that, Sam started going to chapel and was saying, oh, you guys have got to come to this church, like to Anita and John and us. And we were like, oh, nah, it's all good. And then one day Sam was like, oh, I think Dan, Anita and John went.
They were there, yeah.
And then John came home and said to Dan, oh, you've got to come to this church. They have food.
Oh.
And Dan was like, all right, I'm in.
Oh, wow.
And so, we came to chapel. I would have been like, I don't know, maybe like 7 months pregnant with Ava.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time we came and Tapa was at the door and she was like, oh, hello, what's your name? Like, how are you? How was your week? And she was talking to me. I was like, okay, cool, yep, all good. And then went in, sat in church. And at the start, chapel was challenging for me because I didn't know the word very well, and the church that we came from was very like topic-based preaching, I guess, like just touched on some scriptural stuff, but more relating it a lot more relating to just life, I guess.
Yeah, topical preaching, yeah.
Yeah. And so that was really easy for me because it,
Yeah.
it didn't like challenge me in any way. I just like was listening to someone's story, which is, pretty easy.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, the scriptural stuff at chapel was challenging for me to start. And then every week we came back, and I had this real mentality when I started coming to chapel, like, I have lots of friends. I don't need any friends. I don't want to be friends with anyone here.
She was pretty hard. Yeah, you did have this wall.
Yeah, and I think, I guess in hindsight, that was probably a lot from
Totally.
a lot of my past relationship and stuff.
For
I
sure.
just built a wall.
Yeah.
And it was outside my comfort zone. So, I guess I probably struggled to see that people who didn't know me would genuinely be interested in me and my life and what was happening with me.
Wow.
Like Tupper would have genuinely been asking.
And I knew that after it probably took about 6 weeks. And on the 6th week, when the same people were like, how was your week? Like, what did you actually do? Not just like, oh, hey, how are you? You know, like actually invested in, tell me about your week, And I was like, oh, wow, okay. These people actually care what I did this week. And then I think something shifted in me and I was like, oh, it's actually kind of nice. Like these people really care about me, I think.
Yeah.
And then we went to you invited us for lunch at your house at
Nice.
Coco's Crescent.
Yeah.
And
How good was that house?
yeah,
miss
so
Coco. I
good.
miss Coco so
Yeah,
much.
it was so good. And so we went there and we had lunch, and then you came up to me at the end and said, John told me that you were thinking about getting baptised at your old church. I just wanted to give you some information in case you didn't actually know what baptism was about.
Bro.
So that was actually really cool for me because when you first started talking about it, my instant thought was, oh no, someone else wants me to get baptised. Oh no, it's going to be this big thing again.
Yeah. I want a 3-minute video.
Yeah. And you were just like, here, just have some information. I just want to make sure that you know what
you're doing.
What you're doing, So that was cool for me because I actually didn't really know what
Yeah.
baptism
you just had
was.
this sense of God wants me to be baptised, not knowing.
Yeah, fully. And so then I got baptised in your pool, which was so good. Ava was born by that stage, and she got dedicated the same day. And Zeke also got baptised in your pool that day too.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, that was really cool. And that was so freeing that day for me because I had a lot of stuff that I carried from my past that I didn't even really realise that I was carrying that fully got lifted off me that day.
on.
That's huge.
Just so much freedom in who I was and forgiveness for, sin that I'd lived and
Wow,
it was
awesome.
it was really awesome. So yeah, that was cool. It was
That's
really
amazing.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember those dedications.
Yeah.
Dedication on that Sunday in the lounge room.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the baptisms. That was awesome.
Yeah. It
Was
very
I in
cool.
rehab? I don't remember it.
No, you weren't there.
You went to rehab when Ava was 6 months old. Maybe you'd just gone.
Nah, she was older. I remember her coming walking.
Was she?
I think
When
so.
you first went? Nah, I don't think so.
Nah.
She
Or
was
maybe
young.
that was...
towards the end.
Oh, yeah, true.
Yeah.
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 You're in there for a long time, Sam.
He needed it.
You did.
Good things take time.
It's funny, there's a scripture that says, many are the plans of a man, but God orders the steps.
Yeah.
It should say, many are the plans of Dan.
Of Dan.
Because I was
There's many
just,
plans.
just hearing his, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Canada and then come back and do this and this.
And in 12 months...
Oh, it's so cool. He's such a gun.
He's a
Yeah.
deep thinker, though.
He is.
It's so good.
Yeah.
We haven't had him on, eh?
No, we
Nah.
need to.
You do need to.
Fat chance.
What?
He won't come on, will
Yes,
he?
he will.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
make
will.
him, he'll
That'd be
do it.
awesome.
Aye.
It'll be great. Yeah. He's so open about He spoke at youth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah. So good. And I heard some great feedback from it, actually.
That's so
awesome.
good.
It's really good. So
good.
So then you got married.
Yes, we got married. Before we got married, it was pretty rocky actually at the start of our relationship after Ava was born.
Yeah.
Dan was still partying and doing dumb stuff, which wasn't very favourable on my part.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was pretty good
Week
growing
on,
up.
and he was week on, week off, at the start.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't come back till Ava was 2.5, so he was still FIFO. And he went to Bali on a boys' trip when Ava was 6 months old. And my one instruction to him was, please don't do drugs while you're over there.
Okay.
He did.
All he heard was, do drugs while you're over there. Oh, yeah. Good.
So, yeah, that was like, I guess for me it was a real big,
By the way, we laugh about this.
yeah, it's not funny.
No, but there's such we know the redemptive
Yeah.
story in Dan's life.
Yeah.
So anyone
Yes.
watching this, if
Yes.
you think, oh,
Drugs aren't funny.
no.
No, they're
And we're
not.
talking about my brother.
Yeah.
So
Sam's
it's,
brother.
it's funny for me.
If he was here, he'd be laughing about it himself.
Yeah.
Dan's going to watch this podcast and be like, this is meant to be about you, not
No,
about
let's
me.
throw him under the bus a bit more.
No, we're not throwing
This
him
is
under
the
the
joy of
bus.
my life.
Dan's story is an amazing story.
It
and
is.
Yeah.
I can't wait to have it on
Yeah.
here.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was tough. We had a tough time. Like, obviously, he was away. I was, a mum with a new baby at home by myself a lot of the time. Thankfully, I have my family close, and we lived one street away from Dan's parents at the time. So I spent a lot of time with Anita and John, which was amazing. And anyway, we got engaged when she was 18 months old. He proposed to me at Telebudgera Creek. And then we both had a conviction at that time about the fact that we had been in a relationship with each other before we were married. And both of us really felt like we had to honour God and go, like, abstain for a period of time to show God that we honoured that was meant to be something for marriage, saved
good.
for marriage.
Yeah, very good.
So we sought a lot of counsel through chapel and
I remember you guys sharing that with us.
yeah.
Michelle and I.
Yeah.
We've learnt a lot. Like, you actually allow the Holy Spirit to work in people's hearts.
Yeah.
And then they said, this is what God's been saying to us.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
So good.
And that was, like, really amazing for us. I think we went like 3 months, and, like, it was hard because we were living together and had already been in that type of relationship and had a child already and slept in the same bed. So it was really hard. But we ended up we had gotten engaged in that time, and then we decided that we were going to get married soon, quickly.
Yeah.
And so we got married with Dan's grandparents.
Awesome.
So he married us. We got engaged in April. He married us in the July, I think it was, at their house in Sunshine Coast, just with Anita and John there as
So good.
witness. And then, but we didn't tell anyone we got married.
Yeah.
And because we were planning a wedding in Fiji. So, so we did that, and then we waited until we were actually married before we were in relationship again. And it was actually really awesome for us because what we realised was that we were using that as a Band-Aid fix for stuff that was wrong in our relationship.
Wow.
And so by not being able to have sex, we had to actually communicate and talk through our problems and stuff like that without using that as a fix-all.
That's huge, hey?
Yeah. So that was really big for us in
awesome.
Far out.
how we connected, because I guess our relationship started the wrong way. That's how we initially connected, and then we hadn't built any solid foundation outside of that. So that was a really good time for us to actually get to know each other properly and learn how we communicate and
awesome.
be kind of forced to actually have to talk about stuff. And that was really big for us. And then we were getting married in Fiji in May 2016. And just before, a few months before that, Ava would have been 2. And I remember all of a sudden having this so when Ava was 7 weeks old, Dan had a vasectomy.
Right.
Because he was like, I don't want to have any more kids.
Many other plans of Dan.
I told you, one child. And to be fair, I at the time, straight after I had a baby, was like, oh my God, why would anyone ever want to do that again? And so when he said to me, I'm going to get a vasectomy, I was like, that there was something inside of me that was like, I really don't want him to do that. But I came from a relationship where whenever I spoke up about anything that I wanted, it basically just got shut down and he would threaten to leave me. And, it was this constant cycle for 7 years of oh, yeah, I know you want to get married and have kids, but I want to travel and, I want to do this. And then he would leave and then he would come back and be like, no, I've changed my mind. And then it would happen over again. And so I guess for me it was really hard. I had this real fear, if I speak up for what I want, then he'll just leave. And so I felt like I couldn't really say it even if I wanted to. I just was too scared to say how I really felt. So I was just like, okay. And a lot of the reasoning behind that also was that I was terrified that if I got pregnant again and he reacted how he did when I was pregnant with Ava, that would break us. Wow. And so I knew I could never deal with that again. So for me, it was just like, okay, that's just the safest option. Just do that,
Makes sense.
So, yeah, he did that. And then Ava got to 2. We were nearly about to get married. And I was just like, I really want to have another baby. But how am I ever going to even bring that up with him, And Marcus and Dale came and stayed with us. Dan's cousin Marcus and his wife Dale came from Melbourne.
Legends.
And I was talking to her about it and she said, do you actually want to have another baby? And I was like, yeah, I really do. And she's like, you need to tell him. And I was like, I can't. I just can't. He's what's he even going to do? He's had a vasectomy. It's too late, whatever. I just have to, deal with it. And then I sat down with a girlfriend of mine who I've been friends with for 25 years and I was telling her about it and she's like, babe, you really need to talk to him about that if that's, if you feel that strongly about it. Anyway, in jest, when Marcus and Dale were here, I brought it up and he just laughed it off. And then it came up a few times while they were there. And at one point he goes to me, what? Do you actually want to have another baby? And I was like, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I do. And he was like, just completely ignored me. And then when they left, I think it came up again, a couple of weeks later. And he was like, are you being serious? What, you actually want to have another baby? I'm like, yeah, I do. And he was like, oh, my God, I'm so glad I've had a vasectomy because that is the last thing that I would ever want to do. And I was just like, wow, okay. Anyway, so then I just started praying because I was like, I don't even know what to do in this situation. And so I just felt like God was my only hope. And so I prayed every single day, if I'm meant to have another baby, I need you to change his heart because I can't, this is beyond me, And I prayed and prayed and prayed. And one day I was driving home and I was listening to worship and then I started praying in the car again. And I had the radio on at the time when I was praying and I heard the words, audibly heard the words, in good time. And I was like, that was weird. And then I thought, is that on the radio? And then I listened to the radio, but it was 2 ladies speaking on the radio and it was a male voice that I heard. Wow. And I was like, okay, that's strange. Anyway, then I just kept praying about it. We never spoke about it again. And then about a month before we got married, Dan came to me randomly one day. I was in changing Ava, and he said, "Do you actually really want to have another baby?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And he's like, "Okay, well, I don't want to have another baby," but he's like, "But I'm not going to go into another marriage again with something hanging over my head like that is potentially in 10 years' time going to mean that you'll walk away because you didn't get something that you really needed." So he's like, as much as I don't want to for my own selfish reasons, he's like, I know that your want to have a baby is more than my want to not have one.
Oh, awesome.
So he's like, so I'm going to make you this promise that we'll go and look at our options, and then after we get married, if you still want to have another baby, then we'll talk about it. And I was just like,
Wow. Wow.
and because, I mean, for people who really know Dan, well, you'll know that, especially old Dan, that's not something that he was doing on his own accord.
No way.
You know, he was living a really selfish life back then, and that just is not something that he would have defaulted to. So I guess for me, that was probably one of my first real experiences with God where I thought, man, he actually really cares what about us, you know, about what we want. And if he can change his mind like that, then far out, you know. And so he went and had a vasectomy reversal, and then we went and we got married in Fiji, and then we came back, and a couple of months later he said, "Do you still want to have another baby?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay, let's try for a baby." Awesome. So we did, and then it took us 8 months to fall pregnant, which was weird after falling pregnant so easily with Ava. And then I got to 12 weeks pregnant and had a scan, and the baby didn't have a heartbeat. And man, that was just
heartbreaking. Yeah. Far out.
Sorry. Yeah, it was just man, God, why?
What happened?
What happened here? Why? What have I done to deserve this? You know, I wanted this so much, and we've gone through so much to get here, and then now this. You know, I couldn't understand. I had to have surgery because the baby. I didn't even know that the baby wasn't alive. My body wasn't getting rid of the baby, so I went in and had surgery the day after our wedding anniversary.
Wow.
So I'd been married for a year. And that was really hard because Dan, he really internalized a lot of stuff with that. And I mean, I know it's different for guys, but he just was very sort of cold. And I was devastated, and he was just you know, it is what it is. So I felt like I just didn't really get any the comfort that I needed in that situation. And I think it was just his way of coping with what had happened. Or I don't know, maybe he just felt different.
We failed to understand too.
Yeah.
Because it's not
a
part of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally different.
See it, feel it.
Yeah.
Emotionally, there's nothing there.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
So that was that was a really difficult journey.
Yeah.
And then I remember the day after I had the surgery done, I came home and I called Anita and I said, "I just need you to come over. I can't look after Ava. I'm just not in a good place." And I went to the shower and I just sat in the shower and just cried and was like, "God, how could you do this to me? How? I just don't understand. What have I done?" And I was so mad, and I was like, I demand that you give me an answer. I want an answer. I need you to tell me exactly why this happened, because I can't bear this. My heart is breaking.
Yeah.
And anyway, I got out of the shower and went out, and Anita was on the phone, and she's like, "Oh, sorry, I won't be long." I'm like, "It's okay." And then she got off the phone. She's like, "Oh, that was Papa, her dad."
Wow.
And
who's also a pastor, has been for many years.
And she said, he just called me because he said he really felt like he had you guys on his heart, and he was praying for you, and he had a vision of a little boy.
Wow.
And he had spina bifida, and that's why he couldn't stay.
Wow.
And it was just like, it was the craziest thing because I don't know, I was praying in the shower and, like getting angry at God about it, but I didn't actually think that he would give me an answer right then. And so, yeah, it was still really sad, but then I felt so much peace because I was like, okay, you know better. So, yeah, then we tried again, and 3 months later I fell pregnant with Raf. And I think when I had him, it made it clear why the other baby wasn't here.
Right.
Because he was always meant to be here, So, so that was cool. So we had him, and then Sophia surprised us. Dan went from not wanting any more kids to having 2 more.
So good, though. How good is Raph?
Yeah, he's awesome.
And Sophia.
And
How good is
Sophia.
Raph, though?
Raph's a dude, yeah.
He's
The
an
dudest
awesome
dude.
The dudest dude.
Yeah.
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 And then Sophia. I remember saying something to Dan at chapel in the school.
Oh, that was before Raph. You said to him, you came up to him and you said, September. And he was like, what? And you're like, you'll have a baby in September, something with September. And he was like, okay. And September was the month that I fell pregnant with
That's
Raph.
Wow.
Yeah. That was like
That's
a
right.
couple of months before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I knew you guys are trying to
Yeah.
have kids or something.
Yeah.
Was that with Raph?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember exactly where we were standing and everything.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was very cool.
That's amazing. So there's Ava, Raph, and Soph.
Yeah.
And then Zeke at the
Yeah.
top of the food chain.
Yeah.
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 That's amazing.
Yeah.
How's
So-
that gone with, it's not a blended family, I suppose, but it is like Zeke's
Yeah.
dad and son or they call stepmom. I don't know what you call it, but
yeah.
how's that been for you?
Yeah.
Because I
It was-
imagine there's people listening that have that
Stepkids.
scenario.
Yeah.
How do you do that well?
Yeah. I think it was easy when he was little because I find it really easy to relate to small kids, I think it's a lot easier. The dynamic definitely got trickier as he got older. I still remember the coolest moment, for me with him, was me tucking him into bed one night when Dan wasn't home, and he was maybe 10, just before we got married, and I tucked him in and gave him a cuddle and was like, all right, no, mate, I love you. And he said he loved me back, and it was the first time that he'd said that. So that was really cool. And then watching him at our wedding, he cried when we got married. And yeah, it was just really sweet. And I think it's tough, a male-female relationship in that capacity. He's a 17-year-old man now that, I'm not his mum. And but I have never tried to be his mum.
Okay. Good advice.
Yeah, I think that's not my role in his life. I don't. I'll always be there for him to support him and help Dan out, but I've never tried to take on that sort of role because I just don't think that works.
Yeah.
In my experience, even if I said don't do X or whatever, he would usually just go to Dan and say, Dad, can I do this? And so I just really quickly was like, okay, it just wasn't my place. So, I was more just there to try and, be a friend and, and now we have a cool relationship. He's a man of few words. But I ran into him in the shops the other day at Target, and he called out to me from across the shops and was like, Talia. And I went and we chatted for like 15 minutes, as long as I've ever spoken to him in his life, I think.
That's cool.
So
And he loves the.
he loves the kids so much.
I mean, the kids love him too.
Oh man, like my kids are obsessed with him.
Yeah.
They, he lives with his mum. He has lived with his mum for a long time, full time now. But they, even for kids who like Raf and Sophia have spent very little time with him, but even as little kids, like they knew he was their brother, and like it was just they're just so drawn to him. Like, they talk about him all the time. Raf is like, when can I see Zeke? When can I see Zeke? Can we play soccer with Zeke? Like,
that's
yeah.
cool.
So yeah, and he's so good with him. He's got a really sweet heart, Zeke. So
That's good.
yeah.
Well, Talia, thanks for sharing those pretty powerful moments.
Oh, all good.
I love how you revert back to prayer, like God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to me. You got to tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me something.
Yeah. It's I guess probably the biggest thing that I've realised that made so much sense to me now when Dan said why, like the fact that he wouldn't be in a relationship with someone again who wasn't on the same path, and not a Christian as well. And at the time I didn't really understand it, but man, honestly, there's like, this is just such a small like snippet still of so many things that we've walked out, in relationship and stuff. And without God, we wouldn't be here today. 100%. Like, so it is super important.
Really proud of you. We love the journey you guys are on and have been on and are on.
Yeah.
And your kids are precious.
Yeah.
And Ava will take over the church one day, I'm sure.
She'd love it. She's already asking when she can come and record a podcast.
Really?
Is she?
That would be actual
she legit.
quite good.
She's like, Mum, tell Marshall.
Okay.
I want to go and record a podcast.
Okay, Ava, coming for you. Coming at you, Ava.
Fun
Precious. You guys
Yeah.
are precious.
Yeah.
You guys are amazing.
Yeah.
Love you very much.
Thanks, Marsh.
So, cool.
Awesome.